Over 3,000 years ago, someone along the banks of the Nile took up their pen and spoke of passion and desire in the voice of a young woman. "Oh, my beloved, I come with you. What a pleasure it is going to the river. I wish to step inside and bathe in front of you, to let you see my beauty in a tunic of fine royal linen, soaked in scented oil, my hair in a braid. I dive into the water beside you and emerge carrying a red fish, splendid upon my fingers. I place it on my breasts. Oh, my husband, my beloved, come and look." The song plunges us into an aquatic, marshy landscape, a humid, richly sensuous environment filled with the flurry of birds, insects, and fish. It's very different from the expansive desert and sheer cliffs that many associate with ancient Egypt, not least because we are most familiar with the temples, tombs, and great pyramids in the vicinity of modern Cairo and Luxor. My name is Jordan Miller, and I'm doing a DPhil in Egyptology at Oxford. In this podcast, I'd like to explore how the starkly contrasting landscapes of the marshes and the desert could be interwoven through emotionally charged objects as part of the rhythms of life and death in ancient Egypt and Nubia. Sailing upstream along the Nile, over hundreds of miles and past 4 of the whitewater cataracts that punctuate the river's progress through Africa, brings us into modern Sudan. 2,500 years ago, this was the heartland of ancient Nubia. The region was characterized by a strong Egyptian social and cultural presence, and it was the origin of several pharaohs who built temples to the gods and pyramid tombs for themselves. Here we find the site of Sanam. Featuring a temple to Amun and surrounded by other royal building works, Sanam also houses a cemetery. From a grave in this cemetery came our object, a small figurine made of a yellowish glazed material known as Faience. It is in the shape of a nude adolescent girl who is shown swimming. She is now tucked away in a corner of the Ashmolean, behind a shrine of the pharaoh Taharka, and in a case surrounded by other objects that would have been placed in graves. The girl lies prone, her outstretched arms holding a deep rectangular dish. Her braided hair is tied up in a high ponytail, perhaps to stop it from getting wet as she swims. Commonly called cosmetic spoons, such objects would have contained pigments, which were transferred from a storage vessel, scooped up with a stylus, and applied to the face or body. Swimming girls were part of a constellation of motifs. Cosmetic spoons could also be shaped as fishes, flowers, and ducks, and the swimming girls themselves often hold small, cute animals. In religious contexts, marshy landscapes could evoke the solar goddess Hathor, who was sometimes depicted as a cow emerging from a thicket of reeds. Marshes were filled with nests, eggs, and all manner of new life, among which people swam, splashed, and hunted. In another Egyptian text, the tale of King Khufu's court, a wary pharaoh requests erotic entertainment in his riverine estate. Speaking to his palace magician, he commands, "Let 20 oars of ebony be brought to me, worked in gold with handles of sandalwood, worked in electrum. And let 20 women be brought to me, with beautiful limbs, with deep bosoms and braided hair, who have not yet been stretched by childbirth. And let 20 nets be brought to me, and give these nets to the women to wear once their clothes have been set down." And these women rowed upstream and downstream, and His Majesty's heart was happy at seeing them row. I'd like to explore the emotional life of our cosmetic spoon in these environments. I want to consider how it evoked a single emotion, but in different ways, for different people, at different times, and in different places. The emotion I turn to is anticipation. Anticipation is neither positive nor negative. One could even call it an umbrella emotion of sorts, encompassing excitement and nervousness, anxiety and delight. It can also overlay other emotions in the course of events, creating complex, shifting palettes of feeling. I want to dig a bit deeper into the nature of anticipation and see if we can peel back its layers using an object that was itself dug up from the deep past in a moment of discovery that, for archaeologists, would have been fraught with anticipation. Our cosmetic spoon speaks to many worlds. By exploring them, I'd like to throw the spotlight back onto ourselves and ask how our own experiences and knowledge shape the kinds of anticipation that we feel. Some people might propose a symbolic interpretation for our cosmetic spoon, centered on its perceived eroticism. Anticipation is embodied. Handling the object, viewing it, and using the pigment within are actions that are charged with anticipation. One presumably held the spoon by gripping the girl's nude body. The underside of her body features relatively extensive detailing. The musculature of her abdomen is modeled, and her pubic triangle is highlighted. There is always the potential for her to be flipped over. Perhaps she expressed a wish for the dead person's rebirth in the afterlife. But such interpretations originated in the earlier 20th century, when Egyptology was dominated by rather fusty, often quite prudish men. Sexuality can certainly serve more abstract studies of religious ideology, but we might need to take a step back. These are our ways of thinking about the past, but they were probably not how all people of the past experienced their present. Interpretations can certainly be taken too far. For many years, other types of female figurines were often termed concubines, even though women and even children could be buried with them as well. Such approaches also assume a heterosexual male gaze, and indeed a form of it that emerges from Western experience. This may not fit the contexts in which these objects were found, or the identities and outlooks of the people who used them. I think it's safer to view the imagery through a wider lens by placing more weight on the experiences inherent to the archaeological context, the thoughts, feelings, and actions which led to the object's deposition. How do these connect with its erotic imagery and the roles that the object played in other settings? How do funerals connect with celebrations? Such events were much more closely related in ancient Egypt than some of us might think. More monumental Egyptian tombs are frequently divided into two parts. On one hand, we have the burial chamber itself, which was sealed off and inaccessible. On the other hand, we have the tomb chapel, which was meant to be visited by family and peers. Now, if the passing of millennia tells us anything, it's that skincare and makeup rituals remain at the heart of social events. As in the modern day, eroticism was a common feature at ancient Egyptian parties, contributing to lively, passionate atmospheres. Banquets are sometimes depicted in tomb paintings, where adolescent serving girls are sometimes shown dancing, clapping, offering drinks in canapes, and styling the hair of guests, just as our figurine holds up a kit of makeup for someone. Such banquets took place in the courtyards of tombs, or in tents specially set up in the necropolis for such occasions. Cemetery landscapes, which now appear desolate to us, sometimes played host to food and wine, incense, religious recitations, and music. It's true that experiencing the form of our cosmetic spoon was as important as using the substances she carries, and perhaps more so, since the dish she holds shows no trace of pigment. Her presence in the grave was significant. In light of the banqueting scenes just mentioned, perhaps we could understand her not as a means for rebirth, but as someone who could serve the deceased in the next phase of existence. Yet these are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Her nudity may symbolize both servility and display her potentially erotic beauty. It is also important to note that these need not have existed as distinct forms of anticipation in ancient times. They could be absorbed into the solemnity of religious observance, the aspects coexisting without any problems, even if they seem improper to modern eyes. Let us now return to the cemetery at Sanam, to the grave where this girl was found swimming not in a pool, but in the sand. Perhaps she was taken from a dressing table to be interred with someone, presumably during their funeral. Was this the person who owned and used the object when they were alive? We don't know. But people attending the event would have been dressed and made up appropriately, perhaps having used similar cosmetic spoons as part of their own makeup rituals. The object is delicate. It needs to be handled with care and prepared prior to use. It was displayed and used only fleetingly, but always with intention and always with etiquette. The aesthetics of its form and of its implied status as part of a makeup kit mingle with expectations for its eventual burial. At the grave, funerary rites would have charged the atmosphere with anticipation for the successful transition of the deceased into the next world. The swimming girl herself may have brought these ideas to the fore when she was placed in the grave, along with pottery and other cosmetic vessels. Eroticism, beauty, and servility may have been received not so much emotionally, but more so intellectually. Anticipation about the funeral event gave way to anticipation for a loved one's future and one's own relationship with it. In a way, the swimming girl encourages us to dive below the surface of simple iconographic analysis. The object itself cannot be emotionally neutral because it was made in anticipation of its many potential uses. Viewed from the opposite perspective, this range of possibilities enables the object to become a source of anticipation in itself, shaping expectations and experiences of social events. The swimming girl is treated decorously in emotionally volatile settings. She is a trace of the tension and anticipation that pervaded these unusual moments in life.